Chef Ken Bergeron. It's extraordinary that you can walk into a kitchen that's not vegan at a university and you turn the staff and the kitchen into a complete plant-based operation for 4 days, once a year. It's phenomenal. What is the most difficult part, especially trying to work with a staff that's not...
The staff is fine. The difficult part is trying to please everyone in your dining room. We have so many different ways of eating that causes the most stress. People you can please all of the people some of the time, some of the people.
That's what
all
they
the
say.
Time, but you can't please all the people.
How do you get a vegan breading? Because I think that's a question for a lot of people who are transitioning and they know how they would normally make a breaded item, but they don't know how to make a vegan breaded item.
Well, it's a matter of reading. Like a vegan, when you buy your bread, you try to when you buy your bread, you look at the ingredients and you see that there's no dairy products in it and no products that aren't vegan, and that's where you begin. If it's somebody that's new to the game, well, use the bread you have and make fresh breadcrumbs though. That's a key. And but the trick to that recipe is using the seaweed flakes. And the seaweed flakes are what gives it that taste of the ocean. And the oyster mushroom itself mimics the texture of an oyster. So it's what I call cuisine mirage.
Oh, it's a mirage.
It's a mirage, that's right. We see it and it disappears.
And this can sound so simplistic, but since we're aiming at and wanting to help people who are just transitioning and maybe will never buy a cookbook, maybe never read a nutrition book, but they know about, let's say their mother's fried chicken, and they know about the breading. But to turn that in, because they always used eggs, so what can you do?
Okay, so what we do is to start with a very well seasoned flour mixture. And
what do you mean by that?
Flour with salt, pepper, maybe some garlic powders, some onion powders. It's something I learned from Paul Prudhomme. It's okay to use these things if you use them right. And then, to get that seafood flavor, some flakes, either nori flakes or dulse flakes, are incorporated into it. But there's quite a bit in there. And then a portion of that is removed to a separate bowl. That's your first bowl. Your second bowl has a portion of that flour with water whisked into it. So that makes up the second stage, that is often eggs and milk, or just eggs. So,
oh, that's fabulous.
That's right. And then the third stage is into the breadcrumbs. Make sure it adheres well. And
possible. But is there an item that you do every year that people just, if you don't do it, people just say, wait, where is that this year? I was thinking about it all year.
Well, someone asked today about carrot pudding that is served with the icebox cake, and the icebox cake itself is made with pudding, but that pudding is chocolate, and then there's supposed to be carrot pudding served on the side for people who can't have chocolate, and also cookies served separately for people who can't have the one or the other mixed, and that's one of the things they ask for. The mushroom cashew coon soup is popular.
And that's a raw one? Is that a raw
The
one?
garnet yam cake. That always gets high rating.
Say that again?
Garnet yam cake. It's like carrot cake, except it's made with red garnet yams grated.
It's basically a carrot cake, you said.
Sure. Starting with the idea, I've done it with the beets. I've done it with zucchini. So this one uses garnet yams or ruby yams. They're more red, and yeah, that's always a winner.
Yeah.
Always.
So this is
It always receives high marks. So that's why I'm saying that. That's something that people really like to see.
so what you're indicating too is that a cake can be made vegan as well as anything else.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's always new.
But the pastry and the cakes was the hardest part of changing my cooking style. Because if you take away white flour, white sugar, butter, cream, eggs, you have a lot to replace.
That's true.
Yeah, sometimes it's just an ingredient, but yeah, the bacon. So
Right.
there's been other people who helped me, Fran Costigan and Linda LaRue, Connecticut
So
cake baker.
we're going to be interviewing Fran, so we'll get all those little details.
Sure.
But I was just so curious that you did a book several years ago called The Professional Vegetarian Cooking, all vegan recipes, and it is really a professional book. It looks like one, it's thick, and it's actually a course in my mind.
And I illustrated it too. Actually, a lot of the pictures inside are prints that I cut fruit and vegetables in half and applied watercolor to it and stamped it. And some of the tiny ones I had to do by brush.
I didn't realize. Maybe I knew that and forgot. But that's one. I'm going to go back and look at it again. And out of that book, you must have had some responses over the years as to the.
It's still used. It's still pertinent. Many times I'll think, gee, I wish I put that in the book. And I look in the book
And it's
there
there.
it is. That's right.
So
that's,
what is one of the most used recipes in that book, do you think? I know there has to be many, but is there one that stands out that you just say, oh, I'm so glad that's in there?
Well, I don't think about it that way. I think it's more the users will come upon a favorite recipe. I'm kind of attached to all my children in the book.
Of course, they are your babies.
That's right.
So what has somebody told you that they just can't live without that recipe, or that you know they make it a lot?
The Caesar dressing and the tahini dressing. Those are quick items that can be thrown together quickly, and if you use intense flavors in all in parts of the recipe, and that's what happens with those.
Do you know the Caesar recipe off the top of your head?
There's veganase in it, there's extra virgin olive oil, there's dulse or nori flakes in it, there's white miso, a little bit. All these players have a part. The seaweed takes the place of anchovies, the white miso takes the place of Parmesan cheese, salt, pepper, lemon juice, and I think a little bit of water to fill it once it's emulsified. I'm pretty sure that's it.
Very good. Well, I'm going to beg you to borrow that for the book, because I think people really enjoy having an opportunity to have a Caesar salad instead of raw egg in it.
Yeah, and it's spelled S-E-A,
Oh,
Caesar, C-Z.
perfect. So that's what you're saying.
The king of the ocean.
I always appreciated the soups that you make.
I was going to say the soups.
Yeah,
The soups are
they feel so
generally
healthy,
quite
yet they're
popular.
flavorful. And what is a good soup base? Do you make vegetable broth from the beginning, or is there a brand that you like to use in tight pinches?
Yeah, very often. If I'm preparing a meal and there's some vegetable scraps that would be good for just making stock, I'll put them aside in a quart plastic container, put them in the fridge, and then the vegetables that I'm using in the recipe, I'll take off the ends and parts that can be used. Maybe throw in some fresh herbs and the saved vegetables. And so we have what I refer to as fortified water. it's not a true stock because it hasn't cooked that much. It hasn't been sautéed but it's a beginning. They call it charpente in French. The framework of a recipe, stocks are considered the framework. And if I need to use some store bouillon, my grocery store, I don't know the brand name, they stock one that's vegan and doesn't have too many crazy additives in it. One of the most well-known natural food stores has all vegan base as well. They're referred to as bases or bouillon. And usually though, if I use those products, I use them at half strength because I don't want their flavor profile to overwhelm mine.
So you do half water and half broth, and then let the rest your vegetables
let's
take
say
over?
the recipe is 2 to 1, then I'll go 4 to 1. So it's twice as much water as it would normally. If you just were going to drink it as a cup of bouillon, you would make it stronger.
Oh, I see what you mean.
But you don't want
Because you want the flavor from the vegetables or the
flavor
grains
from
or
your
the
cooking, not theirs.
yes, whatever spaces.
shine.
Yeah, that most people can imagine cooking for just a family or 1 or 2 people when it comes to vegan, but it still staggers my mind that you can do this big food service kind of thing. And I know that many times the recipes that you would prefer to make if you were having a dinner party or you were having just a small volume, but when you have to do such big volume, you get to be a little bit limited, I would think. And then you'd have to change them out. But you just do such a fabulous job, and I look forward every year.
We have a great staff here at UPJ Johnstown, and I also have 2 assistants, Kathy DeCoco and David Stroka. David went vegan and promptly lost 100 pounds.
Wow.
He's a big man still, but it's much better for his health. And Kathy, David's in charge of all the meals in all the high schools in Binghamton, New York.
Now, has he found that he needs to address any kind of vegan in those schools, or are they just on their usual terrible fat-laden processed food
He
diets?
says he tries to work in what he can, and I think that's what happens a lot.
Yeah.
And Kathy has her sometimes restaurant, sometimes cooking school, and when the season is in, she has takeout deli in Bethel, Maine, and they're both very talented.
In finishing our talk, is there something that you found that if somebody wants to transition in to a vegan diet and they're not really a cook, they just want to walk in their kitchen and be able to look in the refrigerator and like pull a few things out or go to the pantry and just mix something together in a few minutes, these busy lives. Does anything come to mind that you might tell somebody like that?
Oatmeal.
Oatmeal in the morning.
I start with oatmeal.
Oh, anytime.
And then I'll eat it anytime. I usually make it in the morning and make a big pot, so I may have it for both breakfast and lunch. But I put a lot of things in it. I put raisins, dried cranberries, sometimes together, sometimes not, prunes. If I have some cooked rice, which I usually do, I put some cooked rice into it. I put a nut, walnuts or almonds being probably my nuts of choice, but if I've been eating them quite a bit, I'll switch to another one to get the nutrients of, say, cashews or peanuts. Okay, and then when the oatmeal is ready, I'll put some ground flax seed on top and stir it.
And this is why you're 100 years old and look like this.
I'll be 60 on my next birthday, so I feel pretty lucky.
Yes, yes.
that's the way I like to cook. Even if I were to cook a dinner type meal, I might start with putting some root vegetables in the pan, and then a grain, and what other aromatic vegetables, celery or
Is there a way to
onions.
roast vegetables without spritzing them with some olive oil and have them
A
come
good
out
way?
okay? I mean, can you really roast vegetables without any oil?
I wouldn't suggest it.
Yeah.
It's one of those areas you could get away with a lot less than people put on. One of the things I use to limit the amount of oil is a pastry brush and a little bowl on the counter with olive oil in it. And instead of pouring the olive oil in the pan, I'll just brush the bottom of it. Instead of pouring the olive oil over the asparagus, I'll hold them and just brush it.
Yeah.
And that helps.
Yeah.
I prefer extra virgin olive oil, but I do use some other oils like toasted sesame oil for that Asian effect.
Because the high temperature oils you pretty much should
Peanut oil
use.
is probably the best.
Yeah.
High temperature oil as far as deep frying goes.
And grapeseed oil too.
Walnut oil is wonderful on salads, as is pumpkin seed oil.
Yes.
There are many subtle.
Thank you, Ken, so much.
You're quite welcome.